So I'm going to start with the evolution of S4HANA. So first we need to understand what exactly is S4HANA. So first we need to understand the abbreviation. So S means for simple, are also called suite, and 4 means fourth generation. So the main official name is SAP Business Suite for SAP HANA. So in short, they call it as S4HANA. So we need to first start with where exactly SAP has started, what kind of architecture they used to follow, and where is the architecture now. Okay, so in 1972, you already know that R/1 architecture was there. So from 1972, it is evolved to R/2 in 1979. Okay, so further it is keep on evolving to R/3, and till S4HANA it has came. Okay, so in 1992 and also 2004 we have ERP. So okay, so ERP still follows R/3, but there are, the new user interface introduced, the new concepts are introduced as part of R/3. So that means they involve new tables and new architecture or whatever it is. So that is the one we used to work 5 years back or 3 years back, and most of the people are working on ERP as well. And from this they have created another version which is called SAP Simple Finance powered by SAP HANA. So till ERP, our database is could be anything, right? So it could be Oracle, it could be MS SQL, whatever it is, Microsoft one. So with SAP Simple Finance powered by SAP HANA, so that is the first application, first ERP suite they have introduced with SAP HANA. So they did not completely at a time invented everything in SAP in S4HANA. So they went step by step. First they wanted to see how this will work with financial applications, and they can further develop into logistics or like sales distribution and material management, or further modules were introduced. So that is the complete package of SAP S4HANA. So whatever from 2015, in the 2015 they have introduced with not just simple finance application but also the logistics and other modules as well. So this, as you know, this is still evolving. So every year we get updates to our on-premise system, right? Every year we get it. So we have 1909, 2020, or like that. So 1909 S4HANA 1909. So 1909 is nothing but the first 2 letters are the year, which represents year 2019, and 09 means represents the month, that means the September. Okay, so 2019 September they have released the last version, and the next version will be 2020. Okay, so 2020, you might ask, they have went with a year and a month combination, now why is it 2020? So they just wanted to change the name, the version. It's not going to be the concept like a year and a month from now on. It will be directly 2020, whatever the release that they're going to in 2020, that will be like. Okay, so yearly wise the version will be there now from now on. That is just for an information. So this is in terms of just how the ERP is evolved from 1972 to 2015. So R stands for real-time data processing. So you all heard, right? R/3, R/3, R/2, whatever it is. So R stands for real-time data processing. So if you look at the architecture perspective, how exactly R/1 looks, right, in 1972. So everything is on one server. So that means whatever you are looking at right now, it is there. We used to have different layers. So everything will be in the same system. So it's a giant machine that where the people will be working directly on this specific system. We have presentation layer, application layer, and database layer as well. Okay, so the communication happens between presentation layer and the application layer to the database layer. So for R/2, the client side and presentation layer, the presentation layer and the application layer got into one box, and the other database layer has separated from the initial machine. So we have a database layer, the communication happens just like this. I know this is very basic, so I'll just slowly take this to the advanced level. So client layer, we have presentation layer, application layer, and database layer. We have a separate database layer. So that's to minimize the load on the system. So now initially one server is handling everything. So now they give the responsibility to the other server which can take care of the request and whatever. Okay, so the load is decreased slowly. So that is the main reason. So R by 3, so now everything is separated into 3 different layers. In the presentation layer, that the UI application that you interact as an user, an application tier where the request will be sent to the database server, and database server will respond to the request from the application server. Okay, so this is how the communication happens. So this is how in the architecture perspective. Okay, so the what exactly happening behind the curtains. But how the users are interacting with these applications, so that is the user interface perspective. Okay, so that is also we need to understand, because S4HANA is not just backend completely centric or user interface centric. It's a combination of both. So the powerful user interface with powerful database, which is SAP HANA. So if you go way back in your perspective in 1972, if you are a developer and you want to interact, so this exactly looks like a command prompt. Okay, this server looks like a command prompt. There is no buttons or nothing, so all you have to do is enter the commands. You just have to log in with your credentials and enter the commands and all. So that is very hard for anyone who was back in the time. It's a very time consuming process. So the user interface further evolved with different coloring or with logos. You can see what kind of system they are working on. So this is where new interfaces were being developed. So if you look at the first screen that is used to look like in the old days for SAP, so it is a little bit okay compared to the command prompt. So but there are issues with the performance, with the lagging of the screens. There are still issues there with the the user interface, because the main problem is, you may ask, like, so if you look at Microsoft, Oracle, they have a lot of web applications, and you might think, see, SAP is something it has established even before the internet came, right? So there are no web applications there during that times. They have to stick with the command prompts, and very desktop application, they have to stick with the desktop applications. And by the time internet evolves and start changing the financial industry, and SAP has already has a strong, where they are very rooted to the desktop application. Already they have developed so many efforts, so it was very a bit tough to they immediately switch to the web applications. So based on that, they have created web developer application when as soon as the internet evolved. Okay, so that is a backstory why SAP was not very interested in the user interface, because they are established even before the internet or web application came into the picture. Now, user perspective, if you look at an S4HANA, we have 2015, that is where we have a Fiori app. Okay, so Fiori desktop application, or sorry, Fiori web application. It's kind of a Fiori client, in that we can access all the applications related to our business, which could be manage sales orders, manage purchase orders, or anything. The look and feel is completely changes. User experience is very much improved compared to the previous desktop applications as well. So this is about architecture perspective, and also how the user interface is evolved from the beginning to the day till day. Now the next slide will be, we will be discussing about what exactly a business suite, right? What is business suite on HANA? What is S4 HANA? See, when I'm learning initially, when I'm searching to the Google or whatever, when I'm doing it, I used to heard these terms very frequently: business suite on HANA, S4 HANA. I used to get very confused. what exactly the difference, why it is completely, different terms using, and I see HANA as a database and S4 HANA came into the picture. Is S4 HANA same? SAP HANA and S4 HANA same? These are all the questions I used to raise when I'm, trying to learn these concepts initially back in those days. So to keep, just to for the people who are struggling like me, so this is the only slide that I have prepared so that to clarify everything. Okay, so SAP Business Suite ECC 6.0, that is the one we used to work, right, most of the cases in our career. So we used to simply have user interface, which is nothing but our SAP GUI application, right? So the desktop application, just like our SAP logon pad, we just log into through the transactions and all. So in SAP ERP core, what are the main modules which are available there? So we have FICO, SD, MM, and so on. So you already know. So enterprise warehouse management, warehouse, there are different modules. There are tons of modules are there. So this is just a business suite. At the back end would be anything, right? It could be anything. So it could be Oracle, MS SQL, or MaxDB, or anything. So that is up to the customer what kind of database they would like to maintain. For this business suite, so SAP would give the business suite, and if customer wants Oracle, they'll provide Oracle or MS SQL, so depend on the customer requirement. Okay, so it is could be anything backend. So business suite and HANA, which is also ECC 6.0, there is not much, pretty much differences there, but just to improve the performance, improve the business, improve the, suppose there are some reports which takes weeks or months, the same reports can be executed in an hour or minutes on SAP HANA. So there are customer who has seen this and wanted to improve their response time. They used to have SAP HANA as a database as well, so they can switch to SAP HANA without disturbing their applications, right? So why? Because we develop application as an ABAP developer, right? So we develop applications with OpenSQL, correct? So OpenSQL, in the sense, it is not specific to any database. So database could be anything, and it can freely interact with the database. So with that flexibility, user has a comfort to switch to a different database. So the application still be working on the same, because we have used OpenSQL. They still perform on the other database as well. So users switch to SAP HANA. So then we call it as a business suite on HANA. Okay, so now you might have clear idea what exactly ECC 6.0 on business suite on SAP HANA. Now if you look at SAP S4 HANA, so as a developer or as an user, you can still access to the SAP GUI applications, but it is very, very strongly recommended to use Fiori applications because of the new innovation. Back in days, we always has to use web applications, sorry, desktop applications. If there are any application that you have to carry to in the fields, right? So there are different devices you need to carry. The user experience is very, very uncomfortable, right? Suppose if you want to carry out an application, in a facility, or you have to take the applications with you in a mobile or a desktop or an app, sorry, in an iPad, it's very uncomfortable. The UI interface, whatever you see in the desktop application is takes very long time, or rendering time in order to show an application. So those are the disadvantage with a desktop application. So SAP has invented lot of Fiori applications on S4 HANA, so that they can carry on in the iPad or mobile even as well. Okay, because of the Fiori element there, because of the Fiori concept, so user can carry the applications in any form, like a desktop, or three forms he can carry. Apart from that, not just a user interface change, but also the way the database model used to be there before S4 HANA is different. Okay, it's in ECC 6.0. They have eliminated a lot of database tables. They have minimized the database modeling. Okay, so with that new database design, wherever required, it's not completely changed. There are places where changed. Okay, like in finance, or it could be in sales department, sales and distribution, in logistics as well. So these are the concepts. Just like in our SAP ERP core, finance FICO SDMM, we have finance simple logistic, which are also similar to our SDMM finance. Okay, the only thing is the way they designed the database table, they have eliminated some tables, okay, and merged different tables into one table. That kind of thing they have. This is called a simplification of database model. So these are the two changes in user interface perspective. Fiori introduced, and in the business database modeling perspective, they have simplified the model, so that it could be it's not necessary to store lot of tables in a database. Okay, they have eliminated all this kind of stuff and make it very simple as much as possible. When coming to database, so this should be purely SAP HANA. Okay, it cannot be just it cannot be an Oracle or any database. So this is always purely SAP HANA. SAP HANA, for SAP, they do not have a their own database for a long time. So they used to have a MaxDB. There are different database introduced, but they were not much successful with their new database. So they has to rely on Oracle and MSQL. So ever since the evolution of SAP HANA, they rely the way they improved SAP HANA, they started to make it as a primary database for all their technologies. So that's the reason they have they maintain specifically SAP HANA for S4 HANA versions. Okay, so this is I will take the questions. Please do not worry if you are getting any questions. I will take it, and let's finish the first session first. So we discussed what exactly S4 HANA simplification. Okay, you might ask, so you are telling me the simplification happened, how exactly the simplification happened? So can I then, just to answer your question, I'm going to take a real-time scenario that has already happened with the customer from SAP. Okay, this is a real-time scenario that has happened, literally happened. I heard this conversation with one of the top product owners from SAP HANA in some lecture, so I have prepared one slide for that. So what exactly they were communicating was, so they have taken a scenario, so the traditional database, real-time business data. Okay, they have went to a customer, and their database is what size with 598 GB. Okay, so the entire database, whatever they have. Okay, so with SAP HANA column store and compression techniques, so whatever the concepts which are involved in SAP HANA, when they applied the concept like concept, the database size then coming to a very small size. Okay, so please pay attention to this. Is a very interesting example. So with this example, you will realize how much difference SAP HANA makes as in terms of database. So with SAP HANA, by applying that column store and compression techniques, so we'll discuss about what is a column store as well. So in the second session of today, so do not worry. So when they applied, they have seen a significant reduction of size in the database. So it has come to, it has really happened. Okay, this is not a theoretical thing or hypothetical situation. This really happened. So in 598 GB, they are able to manage to reduce to 180 GB. Okay, the database size. So they didn't stop there. So column store compression techniques will significantly, so they are kind of what you can say algorithms, whatever they have developed as a software, they're able to reduce the data. So they haven't simplified the data model yet. That means whatever I told you right initially, they have eliminated some database tables and keep it in a reduce the amount of tables that needs to store the data. Okay, they are minimized the database model. So with that, they're able to reduce to further 42 GB. So look at 598 GB and where 42 GB is. Okay, so that is how they're able to reduce to 42 GB. So the story do not end here. Okay, now this comes an interesting part. So let's say I have simplified the model, database model, and I have all the data in 42 GB. Now take this situation. So you are a user and you are interacting with an application. Okay, so it could be an analytical application or a transactional application. So most of the cases in transactional application, you will be dealing with the current data. right? Do you interact with the data which is 5 years ago in a transactional application? Most of the cases, no, right? But in analytical application, you may look into the data for the past 5 years or 10 years. Okay, so if you see a variation here, so there are some applications we use the current data. It could be 1 year or 2 years, or analytical application it could be 5 years or 10 years. So when you identify this, what kind of data you are interacting frequently, so you can keep that data only. So it's not necessary for you to keep a data which is 25 years old. You may not be required in the current applications. So there is a difference. There is actual data and different data, right? So that is we are not using. So when you keep the actual data that is necessary for your business application, current business application, that is further eliminated the amount of data that is to be stored. So the data still be there, but the main data that is required will be stored in the device, in the server or whatever. So it is just 8 GB. So if you look at from a hard disk to a phone memory, right? So they're able to manage to sync this particular amount of data that could be barely fit in a mobile. So you can interact with this kind of data. So that is a traditional database. This is exactly happened to a client. So they have given this kind of a demo and they got able to manage their data into, reduce their data into 8 GB. Okay, hope you are clear with this example, how the simplification and also SAP HANA concepts are reducing the amount of data that is to be stored. So when you reduce the amount of data that is to be stored, and the performance or the response time is also significantly improved, right? It's not just with the memory, it is also about the response time. Okay, so just I will show you a simple example, right? So how in SD area, how simplification is done. For example, if you take a sales document status table, we used to have different tables, VBUK, VBUP, or eliminated. Okay, these tables are eliminated. You can still see in the system, but they are not storing the information. Now the status details are added within the table only. So here itself they are managed to remove some tables which are showing the status. Why can't they just store it in the VBAK table itself? Now if you go to VBAK, there is a new append structure which is added in S4 HANA, which is VBAK status, which has a structure. Now that will store the status itself within the database table only. So there is no separate table. Okay. Similarly for all these tables, so if you look at here itself, they are able to remove 5 database tables here. Imagine that is applied to different areas and different scenarios in this S4 HANA concept. So how many tables could be eliminated, how much data can be saved, right? So it'll still be there, so you will not be able to store the information. Okay, so this is about a simplification, just a small examples. This will not cover everything. If you want to further know what kind of simplification is done, you can simply search for S4 HANA simplification list in Google. You'll get a PDF document for every version, what kind of simplification they have done. Okay, you just search S4 HANA simplification list on Google. So far we have covered architecture perspective, user interface perspective, what is business suite on HANA and S4 HANA. We discussed about a real-time topic, how the data is reduced for a customer. Okay, and we have seen a small example on S4 HANA simplification.